Oh, hello world, I'm Dan Shaheen. Today we're going to talk about data. We're going to talk about a common use case for my clients. And that use case is to take data from a legacy data system. It's usually, that could be something as complex as an accounting system or something as simple as a spreadsheet. And to try and load that data on a regular basis into Salesforce and to have a relationship between data that you're inserting without having to do a lot of manual futzing around. So how do we do that? There's lots of ways to do it. I mean, you could get a spreadsheet and you could get your data and you could chop it up into different objects, make sure your column types are right, download the bulk data loader application from Salesforce and just connect it to your org and you're good to go, right? And that's great for a casual user who needs to upload some contacts or something like that. It's probably going to fit the bill. But sometimes you want to do something a little bit more. So let's take a look. I'm going to bring up my screen here and let's take a look at what we've got. So on the left side of the screen, let's pay attention to that first. And what we've got here is some sample data, okay? And I've got a list of contacts. And, this came from our accounting system, right? And we can't always control the quality of the data that's coming out. We managed to get a first name, last name, a validated email address, a phone number, company name, and luckily we were able to get the accounting people to give us the account ID that we use for those accounts. So what does this mean? What do we want to do with all this? Let me pump up these fonts. Maybe that'll help a little bit here. So what do we want to do with these data? Well, basically, what we need is, we can see there's 3 unique account IDs here. So what we need is, we want 3 accounts and we want to insert these 7 contacts and make sure that they're all associated to their proper accounts. And if we change data in one of them, we want that data to update. And we don't want to create duplicate contacts. So how do we do that? A lot of easy ways to do it. And I'm just going to show you one that I've been using and has been pretty successful for me. So let's take a look at this script. This is the ETL script. And basically, we're going to clean up some old data. We can ignore that. Everything else happens here. We use a command called SQLite 3, right? SQLite 3 is just a command line client on top of the SQLite libraries. And what's SQLite, you ask? Well, it's only the most widely deployed database in the world with over 1 trillion instances. I mean, if you got a phone, you got SQLite databases. And if you got a computer, you got SQLite data. If you've got a Linux machine, a Windows box, or a Mac, you've got SQLite libraries available, maintained by an open source foundation, supported by a consortium of companies, so that there's active development going on this thing. Anyway, I'm not going to say much more than this. SQLite is an amazing thing that you should know more about because it's completely free, both as in free beer and as in free speech. That is to say, it's completely open source and available for you to use. It's often used as a file format. And my insight was, I thought it would be really well suited to do some simple data transformation in the context of an ETL process. So we need to take some data, we need to extract it, we need to transform that data somehow, and then we need to load it into Salesforce. So all we do here is we're going to use 2 different commands. We're going to use SQLite and we're going to use SFDX. That's the Salesforce command line utility that lets you do, besides creating scratch orgs and doing stuff with Salesforce DX development per se, it can be used for a lot of other useful things, including leveraging the Salesforce bulk data API. So that's what we're going to do here. All we're going to do is we're going to run this. We're going to run SQLite, and it gets commands from this SQL script, which we'll show you in a minute. It's going to log in and create an alias called ETL org, and then upsert 2 files to that org. And then we're going to open the bulk data loading page and look at the results. That's all this script is going to do. Let's quickly look at the SQL script, right? So this is structured query language. This is literally SQL is often thought of as just this thing you do to query databases, but in reality, it's a language unto itself, and you can do a lot of amazing things. Especially with simple string transformations, it's very efficient at doing those things. But we're not going to go into very complex examples, but we're going to show you a pretty common use case that we want to tackle. So what do? Here's the entire script. All we're going to do is that we make sure we turn on CSV mode so that it can handle comma-separated value format files. We're going to make sure that it understands the separator is a comma, and we're going to make sure it understands that there are headers on these files, right? Headers at the top specifying what the field names are. And that's what's amazing, because SQLite, the utility here, SQLite 3, is smart enough to be able to import a CSV and look at those headers and just create a table based on that. Now, if we look, I've got a SQLite viewer built right in to my IDE. And so if we take a look at the input table, right, this is the table. This looks just like the CSV that we pulled in because it is. But in our SQL script, all we did is created some views. What's a view? A database view is not really another table. It's almost, you can just think of it as like a stored database query. It's a way of looking at a table in the database. That's why it's called a view. So what we do here is we make sure we query the field as it is in our CSV file and use this as statement here to say what we want to see the column header of this file called in our output format. It really is that simple. And when you see these square brackets on some of the field names, that just means that there's a non-SQL legal character in the field name of the input data, like a space in this case, or a dot in this case, and you can just easily deal with that in SQLite by using square brackets. It's just one of the many really thoughtful and convenient features built into SQLite. I can't not recommend it, looking in and learning about SQLite enough. It has so many applications, but I digress. Let's continue here. So all we're doing from there is we set up some views with some new field names and output those as SQL statements. We just say select everything from that view. Now, what you'll notice is we created two views on the data, on one set of data, right? And one of these has a group by query. And what's going on here? Because there are multiple accounts, we want to make sure that we don't insert seven different accounts. We want to make sure we only insert the uniquely defined account IDs, right? That the accounting department thankfully provided for us. So we just use a group by here. And what does this end up looking like? Let's see what the accounts view looks like. It's really as simple as this, the name of the account, and this external ID. This is just a field in Salesforce, a custom field I added. This is in my developer org with my namespace for my org. This is just a custom field that I've identified as a unique external ID. All right. And that means that I can upsert these accounts using that external ID in place of the unique Salesforce ID that you may not even know, especially if you're inserting a brand new account. But if you're inserting an existing one, it'll look for this external ID and make sure that you're never duplicating, creating new accounts. You're either creating or updating an existing account, right? So there's 3 unique accounts with 3 variables here. But then the really tricky part here is then how do we insert the contacts with a reference to an account that may not even have been created yet? So let's look at our contacts view, and everything looks familiar. It just looks like the fields we remember, except for one thing, 2 things rather. It itself has an external ID. And in this case, I just used a hack of using their email address as the external ID to ensure, since email addresses, you don't have to be unique on the contact record in Salesforce. But in reality, they are unique to a person and a contact. I just use this as an external ID field, and I make sure that if we insert a contact with this email address, we're never going to duplicate it. That may or may not be what you need to do depending on the business logic and other rules going on in your org. But hey, this is just for the purposes of this demo. The really neat thing is the last field here. Now, this is the account ID field, technically, on the contact object. And this is what relates the contact to an account. And what we've gone ahead and done is taken the account ID that we saw over here in the input data and specified that as a field called account.ShaheenExternal, which is the external ID on the account that we showed before. The data loading, the bulk API, and the data loading protocols are smart enough to let you not have to know the ID, the Salesforce ID rather, of the account, as long as you know and have specified a field that is an external ID. This is the magic that's going to let us insert and upsert everything the way we want. But all right, don't take my word for it. Let's run this script and see exactly how it works. So we'll go back to the script here and we'll just, let's clear this out here and then we'll run it. You just run etl.sh. And what just happened? It opened me up to this page. Oh, it wants me to authenticate to make sure that I'm connecting to the Salesforce org that I really want to upsert this to. If you're like me, you got a lot of different orgs you might have open, so you don't want to take it for granted. So I make sure that we log in. I'm going to log in as me. It tells me here, oh, great. I've authenticated. I can close the browser now. So I'll close that browser tab. And now we kind of got to wait a second here. While we're doing that, we can look over here at the SQLite web page. That's pretty cool. You can check it out. Oh, looks like our first bulk data load ran. It looks like our contacts, or our accounts rather, 3 accounts upserted successfully. Might take another little bit. It's upserted the contacts, and now it's opening us straight to the bulk data load results page. We can see that we had 8 contacts and 3 accounts, just as we planned. And heck, you can even dig right into here. If you want to see exactly the request and the result, you can see the exact file that we upserted, right? It'll just be a duplicate. And you can also see the result. I guess we could take a quick look at the result. You can open this up. It's a CSV. You can open it up in whatever. I'm just going to open it up here in the numbers spreadsheet. Hang on just a sec. Let's do this. And you can see we've got the new ID of the objects that were inserted. What does that mean exactly? Well, it doesn't mean a lot until you go in to your accounts and contacts and you can see what's going on, right? So if we go and let's go to accounts and let's look at recent accounts, and we can see right here, Legion, Doom, Justice League, and Avengers. And if we go to each one of these, we should see the appropriate contacts. These are Justice League members in the Justice League account, and you can see the Avengers in the Avengers account and the Legion of Doom in the Legion of Doom account. So that's the basics. You know, it was as simple as that. It took mere moments. It was really easy to use. Now, what were the requirements for this project? I probably should have started with that. So let's talk about the requirements for a second, okay? Let's talk about what we needed here. I wanted a process that was, 1, it had to be simple because I'm simple, so the process has to be simple. 2, it has to be scriptable, right? I'm also lazy, so I don't want to have to manually do this. I want to be able to have this written in a script that I can just run, maybe on a cron job or some other way. 3, it's got to be scalable, right? It's great. Yeah, Dan, great. You upserted, 3 accounts and 7 contacts. Whoop-de-doo. Well, since we're using SFDX, the tool from Salesforce, and it's leveraging their bulk data API, this is capable of upserting millions of records. It's not quite as simple as I showed you, but maybe that's another video. All right, it's scalable. 4, it has to be savable. This is almost synonymous with the fact that it's scriptable, but I just want to drive home the point that all of these things I can commit to source code control. They can be worked on, iterated on, pull requests, etc., so that we track changes to them. And that's really important. right? An ETL process is needs to be as tightly controlled as any other type of engineering project. Fifth, it's got to be free, man. These things cost a lot of money, and frankly speaking, it's not rocket science. Do a little bit of transformation. I hear the questions that you're going to ask already about, oh, what about dates? What about compound fields, etc.? Well, I've got solutions to all those things. If you got questions, reach out to me and we'll talk about them. Maybe we'll talk about them on an upcoming video. Let me know in the comments what I left out, what you'd like to learn about, and maybe some upcoming videos will address those issues. Also, if you have a moment, please hit like if you like this video, if it was helpful to you, and maybe consider subscribing to this channel. I know I don't have a lot of videos yet, but I plan to put a lot more technical content up here as soon as I can. So thanks for watching this video. I hope you make your ETL dreams come true, and best of luck to you. Thanks for watching.